Welcome back to Benjamin West and His Cat Grimalkin by Marguerite Henry. When we last left off, the committee had arrived at the Door Latch Inn to decide what was to become of Benjamin and his painting. Chapter 20, The Fork in the Road. Benjamin stepped across the threshold. Little groups of people stood huddled about his pictures. Miller Clinkenbeard was running his fingers along the painted cattails. "Look mighty furry and natural," he chirped. "La!" shrieked Mrs. Tompkins as she caught sight of the flying squirrel. "I thought the varmint was going to fly out of the picture and land in my hair. I can't abide flying creatures," she whimpered, clapping her hands over her head. After the committee had looked from picture to picture, they settled down like a flock of rusty blackbirds on a newly plowed field. Papa motioned Benjamin to an empty stool in the front row between Beriah Hadwin on the one side and Schoolmaster Snevely on the other. The elders sat on a long bench facing everyone else in the room. Grimalkin now pattered softly down the narrow aisle between the women's and the men's sides, his ears laid back, his tail lashing the air. When he came to Beriah Hadwin, he stopped dead. The man was sitting on his favorite basket-bottom chair. Slowly, he brought his 4 feet together and arched his back. "Yow!" he spat, but only the family knew that he was trying to say, "Thee, stranger, thee is sitting on my basket-bottom chair. It is mine, mine, mine." Suddenly making a spring, he seized the calf of friend Hadwin's leg and began using it for a scratching post. "Eee!" screeched the woodcomber, trying to shake Grimalkin off. But Grimalkin continued to sharpen his claws with great vigor on friend Hadwin's wool stockings. "Down!" whispered Benjamin in Grimalkin's ear, and the word was magic. Grimalkin stopped scratching and hid under the shadow of Benjamin's stool. A hush settled down over the parlor. It grew deeper. Benjamin watched the sands in the hourglass on the mantel. Seconds and minutes were spilling away. At last he could feel a slight movement beside him. Schoolmaster Snevely was on his feet. His voice broke through the stillness. "Life is a journey," he exclaimed in his schoolroom voice, "and sooner or later we come to a fork in the road. Benjamin faces the fork in his road. One way leads to Philadelphia and the occupation of painting. The other points to a useful trade." "Ah," he sighed, "it is a grave concern that lies on this meeting. Let us now give due consideration to the matter." In the silence that followed, every head was bowed. All eyes were closed. Benjamin closed his eyes too. Here in this room, his future hung on a thread. A handful of grown-ups were going to decide about his whole life. How could they know that he was happy only when he painted? How could they know that to him nothing else seemed to matter? He did not see Beriah Hadwin rise to his feet. He did not see Grimalkin spring upon the basket-bottom chair and settle down for a catnap. "Friends," cheeped Beriah Hadwin in his bird-like voice, "pictures are ornaments, and ornaments are needless. We have ever been a plain people. We need useful men, candle makers and potters and millers and sawyers, and, yes, wool combers. A man's deeds are fixed in the hearts of his friends, not his fleshly image on a canvas." and he sat down heavily on Grimalkin, as if the weight of his words were too much for him. What a commotion! An ear-splitting howl from Grimalkin, and added to the howling came cries from friend Hadwin, who shot into the air like an arrow from a blowgun. Poor Kitling, soothed Benjamin as he took Grimalkin in his arms. Friend Hadwin did not know he was in thy favorite chair. The meeting can go forward, pronounced one of the elders as the room quieted down. A long and uneasy silence followed. Benjamin wiped his moist hands on his breeches. The meeting seemed to be going forward, he thought, although no one was saying a word. It was almost candle-lighting time when a stool scraped across the floor in the men's section. Benjamin said a quick prayer under his breath. Let it be friend Williamson, O Lord. Let it be him. Friends, the deep, pleasant voice of Mr. Williamson rang out. Oh, thank thee, O Lord, for thy promptness, breathed Benjamin. Friends, journey back with me to the year 1682, the kindly voice was saying. The good ship Welcome is sailing up the river Delaware. At her prow stands William Penn. His hand is resting on the shoulder of Thomas Pearson, the grandfather of our Benjamin West. Side by side, these two men explore the very lands we now cultivate. What would thee name this spot of land? Asked William Penn of friend Pearson. I would call it Chester, replies friend Pearson, and Chester it has been ever since. Benjamin peered around at the committee. Black hats and starched white caps were nodding in agreement. Now, skip the years with me, Mr. Williams was saying. William Penn is dead. Friend Pearson is dead, but we, their children, carry on. Mrs. West, friend Pearson's own daughter, is here among us. She and John West have raised 10 children. Many of us can call to mind the miracle of Benjamin's birth. Benjamin could almost feel his ears prick forward. What was this about a miracle? What was this? It was a first day morning of autumn in the year 1738, Mr. Williamson's voice rolled on. The great preacher Edmund Peckover was visiting Chester County. He preached in our meeting house until the very rafters seemed lighted with an inner light. So deeply was Mrs. West stirred that her 10th child, Benjamin, was born before his time. Thee, Dr. Morris, will remember Edmund Peckover's words. Aye, agreed Dr. Morris, I remember them well. Thy son will be no ordinary man, he predicted as he shook Mr. West's hand. Benjamin grew wide-eyed. Why, how very exciting, he thought. He'd never heard this story before. He looked across at Mamma. Her hands were folded quietly, and she looked into the fire as if the whole story were repeated. Mr. Williamson took a deep breath. Edmund Peckover's words have come to pass, he said. God has given a great gift to Benjamin, the art of painting. Who can say that it shall be quenched like fire? Let him use this gift to portray the best that is in nature and in man. If I may say so, the signpost on his road points to Philadelphia. Suddenly voices were raised from every part of the room. I hold with friend Williamson's words. I hope the committee will approve his words. I am of the same mind. Yes, yea, yea. Schoolmaster Snevely rose. A boy who found his colors in the earth, who made his own brushes from his cat's tail, who used poplar boards for paper. Such a boy should be sent to Philadelphia with our blessings. We are all in agreement, piped the woolcomber from Goshen, but this time he did not rise from his basket-bottom chair. A short period of silence followed, a warm, friendly silence. It made Benjamin feel good to the very soles of his feet. Now the elders turned to one another, shook hands, and suddenly the meeting was over. Somehow, Papa's and Mama's and Benjamin's eyes met. There was a smile among them. Then Papa stirred the fire, and Mama lighted the bayberry candles. Never before had the parlor seemed so bright. Firelight danced on the walls and gave color to the sober faces of the elders. The candles burned yellow arrows of light and held them in soft blue halos. Benjamin was the center of a buzzing circle. How nice their hands feel, he thought. Not hard and cold at all, but warm and rough, like Grimalkin's tongue. As the circle widened, there was a little lull. It was plain to see that everyone expected Benjamin to say something. For a long time, no sound came, only the singing of the fire. I aim to make you glad of your belief in me, Benjamin said at last. I aim to make you glad. Friends, Mama announced from the doorway, a little refreshment is ready. Not counting the family, 26 sat down to table. Everyone was in fine appetite. The whipped syllabub vanished like snow in April, and the mountain of caraway cakes dwindled until only a few crumbs were left. The sky was hanging out its flickering lanterns when the committee members mounted their horses and turned out of the courtyard. Grimalkin chased them until they were well beyond the gate. Then he flew back into the house and tucked his snow-wet paw into Benjamin's hand. He held it there for a very long time, as if to say, I congratulate thee too, Benjamin. But don't forget me in thy plans.